Plot Days by Griffin Rose on AO3. Episode 2, Chapter 1. That had been days ago now. Izuku still hadn't been able to change back to a human kid. He tried to find his way to school, but he'd gotten hopelessly lost running through the streets the other night. He wasn't sure he'd even in the same city anymore. He discovered quickly that meowing at everyone he passed didn't get him anywhere. A few people tried to pet him, and he swatted them away. There wasn't time for that. It wasn't an actual cat. His mom had been hurt, and he didn't know if she was okay. Most people ignored him. Some teenagers after school looked at him the way Dad sometimes did, and didn't stick around to find out what they wanted. Food and water were quickly becoming a problem too, and his burns hurt. A high school girl spotted him one day and left part of her lunch for him, and he'd found dirty puddles to drink out of. It wasn't enough. And then it started raining. He tried to find shelter in doorways or anywhere else he could, trying desperately to change back, but he couldn't find that clear state of mind that Counselor always wanted him to imagine. The situation was stressful. He decided that the next person he found, he would bangle them until they took him in, even if they took him to an animal shelter by mistake. The shelter would have to realize he was actually human. If they didn't, at the very least, he'd be out of the rain. Except the next person he ran across in an alley was trying to break into an electric shop. The robber froze, a keypad a mess of wires in his hands, staring at an equally frozen Izuku. The robber let out a breath. Just a damn cat. And then, he ignored him and went back to fiddling with the keypad. The man dropped from the sky and threw out some kind of gray tentacle to wrap around the robber. The robber swore and twisted unnaturally to try to escape. Some kind of flexibility quirk? Izuku wished he could ask him about it. The man with the tentacle yanked the robber towards him, and they weren't tentacles at all. It was some kind of scarf. He slammed a fist against the robber's head, and the man dropped. Oh, he must be a hero. This is perfect. Izuku cried for all he was worth and ran forward. The hero cut off his scarf and tied up the robber, watching Izuku approach. Where the hell did you come from? He crouched down and held a hand out for Izuku to sniff. He didn't really look like a hero, and Izuku second-guessed his approach. He wore all black and his hair was messy and greasy. But he caught a robber, so he couldn't be all bad. Izuku put his front paw out in the man's hand to stand taller and meowed loudly right in his face. Is that right? The man asked. He reached his other hand around to pick Izuku up, cradling him against his chest. Where'd you get these burns from, huh? A bunch of lousy teenagers, I bet. You got anywhere you're supposed to be? Izuku meowed again, looking up at his face. He wore yellow goggles, but the man moved them up to look him over better. You really are green. Did someone drop you in a bucket of dye or something? It was a fair guess, Izuku supposed, but it was really just because that was his natural hair color. Let me call this guy in, and then I'll take you someplace warm, all right? The man's voice was soft and gentle, and he delicately scratched between his ears. It was the best offer Izuku was going to get, so he waited patiently for the hero to call the police about the robber. The hero had to wait for the police, but his arms were nice and warm, mostly sheltered from the rain, and Izuku dozed off in them. He didn't wake up until he heard keys jingling in his locket, and then a door opening and closing. Let's get you cleaned up, huh? The hero said, slipping off his shoes and carrying Izuku through the apartment. It was smaller than his old home, and it lacked a lot of the cozy comforts that Izuku was used to. The hero took him into a bathroom and pulled out a towel. He dried Izuku off, leaving him wrapped in a towel while putting a first aid kit out from under the sink. I'll be quick, I promise. Just hold still. Izuku held as still as he could, only making a few soft cries when the burn cream stung. The hero was done quickly, as promised, and he held Izuku again, praising him for being a good boy. Izuku nuzzled into his chest. Yes, this man was a stranger, but he'd been alone and scared for several days now. Any kindness, felt like a miracle. Even better, the man carried him to the kitchen and pulled out some bowls. One he filled with water, and the other he dumped a can of tuna fish into. Izuku ate it happily. The man disappeared while he ate, but he came back in sweats and a t-shirt, toweling off his own hair. Finished already, huh? Guess one more can wouldn't hurt. Izuku meowed in agreement, and the hero put out another can of tuna in the bowl. It was gone almost as fast, and then Izuku drained the water. The man refilled it before going to the living room to sit on the couch, turning the television on. Izuku followed him, hopping on the couch and putting his paws on the man's lap. He meowed again, which got the man's attention, but he couldn't articulate what he really wanted to say. No amount of meowing would translate to, "I'm human and stuck like this, and I think my mom is hurt." He received more pets for his efforts, and eventually he gave up, curling into a ball against the hero. There were worse places he could be right now, he supposed. Hopefully after he slept for a while, he'd be able to change back and explain with words about his mom. Hopefully it wasn't too late. They both fell asleep on the couch with the TV on, but Izuku woke up alone. Sounds of cooking came from the kitchen, and he climbed onto the back of the couch to see the man yawning next to a coffee maker. The news was on, and he heard his name. He whipped around so fast he fell out of the cushions. "Still missing," the reporter said. The picture was in the top corner. "His mother, Inko Midoriya, passed away this morning from injuries sustained in their home fire. Her husband, Hisashi, is wanting for questioning, and authorities are asking anyone with information on his whereabouts to please report to this number." His mom was dead. He was too late. His mom was dead. His mom was dead. He wasn't aware he started screaming, but the hero that took him home did. "Hey, what's the matter with you?" He scooped Izuku off the couch. "You're all right." Izuku cried out again and turned to the TV. Now would be a great time to change back, but he was so far from the clear state of mind he needed, it was never going to happen. "What? You recognize that kid?" the man asked. "Was he your owner? Is that how you got these burns?" Izuku meowed. That was close enough to the truth for him, and hopefully the hero took his meowing as an agreement. "It's all right, buddy. Shh, I've got you." The man turned him away from the TV. "No, no, no!" He then turned the TV off altogether. Izuku cried out again. He missed words. He really needed to be human. He needed to tell this hero who he was so he could go home. Except, there wasn't really a home to go back to, was there? Mom was dead. Everything was on fire, and Dad... He didn't want to see Dad. He hid his face in the hero's chest and refused to come back out, no matter what the man coaxed him with. Shouta didn't mean to adopt a cat. He loved cats, and he brought Stray home for a few days before taking them to a shelter. He tended to work long hours and was terrified of something happening to him and the poor creature being left alone to starve when he didn't come back. But this cat, this scrawny, burned kitten, it latched onto him immediately, and he knew the second he patched the poor, scrawny thing up, he wasn't taking him to a shelter. It was remarkably well behaved for such a young cat, and he thought the weird green color was because of some horrible owner thinking it was funny to dye their cat. But now that he looked closer, it looked like green really was the thing's natural color. He'd seen weirder things in the world, but it held still even while crying out in pain. It looked at him when he talked, and he swore it understood him, and meowed back like he could talk. And there was something about its eyes. He was sure it was nothing more than the same mutation that gave its green fur, but its eyes held so much pain and fear. It was like he was looking at another person. And then, the whole thing with the news in the morning. The cat was absolutely distressed about the poor Midoriya family. Again, looking at him and shrieking, begging him to understand. He never wished he could understand cats more than that moment. The only thing he could do was hold the poor thing until it calmed down, and then it refused to be put down, so he went about his day with Cat in his arms. It wasn't the worst thing in the world, He'd been planning to get the cat checked over by the vet, but with how distressed it was, he decided to wait another day. He didn't want to stress the cat out any more than it already was. He looked into the case that day. Neighbors reported yelling before the fire started, but all 3 family members were missing by the time the fire department arrived. Hisashi had a fire-breathing quirk and was a prime suspect for how the fire started. Inko had been found that night with severe burns and was hospitalized. She passed away from her injuries that morning. No one had seen Izuku. The kid had a shapeshifting quirk, and if he was scared his dad would come after him, Shouta wasn't surprised. He would be hard to find. He'd keep an eye out while on patrol, but Musutafu wasn't exactly around the corner from Nujiri, where his family lived. It was unlikely Izuku would come so far. He looked at the cat in his lap again. It wasn't likely that this was the family cat either, considering how far away they were. This answered exactly none of his questions about this cat. He scratched the cat's head. "Just where did you come from, huh?" Tomorrow he'd check the shelter and see if anyone reported a missing green cat. If no one had, he was bringing the little guy back home with him. Someone needed to give this guy a good home. And Shouta was pretty sure the cat already adopted him, considering how he was clinging to him. Oh my god, we got to see a little bit of Aizawa's point of view. Also, Izuku's green. Ignore the thumbnail. I made the thumbnail before I read the fics. Half the time I always do that. You could always tell, because sometimes they don't match. But yeah, I made the thumbnail before I read the fanfiction, so Izuku's black, because I thought he was going to be black. I don't know why in my head I thought, oh, he's probably not going to be an unnatural color, because I was like, I could do green, but maybe he's not going to be an unnatural color for the simple fact that, you know, Aizawa isn't going to first think, oh yes, this is a quirked animal, therefore it could be a person shapeshift as a cat. I don't know why I didn't think that. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know why. I just didn't. And so we have this dilemma now, where, yeah, it's a dilemma. It truly is a dilemma. Anyways, okay. So far, I'm really liking it. It's actually kind of hard to step away from this and have to record something else. I'm gonna be honest with you. Griffin Rose, you're making it really hard not to read ahead. Really, really, really hard. Like, part of me just wants to read ahead and just go straight through. But no, I will control thyself. I can stop reading fanfictions whenever I want. It is not an addiction. Do not ask what I was doing at the party today. I definitely was not reading fanfiction at a 40-year-old's party. Okay, I was, but I was bored. Everybody had a talking buddy and I had no one. So what did I do? I took out my trusty, dusty, really nice, and absolutely wonderful AO3. Okay? Fucking sue me. Please don't. Okay, as always, my raindrops, make sure to eat, sleep, drink water, take your meds. Have a wonderful day or night. Link to my Discord server and socials are down in the description. Subscribe to see more of my content, and thank you so much for watching.